Okay, do you have a case ready?
Yes.
I'm Dr. Rachel Griffiths, and I'm with my father and business partner in aquatics,
Dr. Tom Griffiths.
Welcome to the Drowning Files, where each week we share a lawsuit we've been involved in or another true story with suggestions to learn from these tragedies to save lives. So what case do you have?
Let me start by asking you this question. Have you ever heard that you can't sue the government? I mean, have you ever heard that?
I've heard you say that.
Oh, there you go. Nice to know you listened. That's a phrase that we often use here in the United States because many governmental agencies are immune from prosecution or lawsuits. They're just, you can't sue the government. I mean, that's what everyone says. That's what my dad told me, and apparently that's what I told Rachel. Well, I was involved with a lawsuit created by a drowning on a military base in the United States. Now, this case is somewhat unusual for two reasons, in that the plaintiffs, the family, did in fact decide to sue the government, to sue this military base. And that's one thing. And the other important fact is if you have an incident on a military base, like this was a drowning, a young child went to a daycare center that was there for the families of the soldiers who were stationed at this military base. Yeah, it was in the 90s, so early 90s, so I don't remember too much. I just remember he was in daycare. They had a field trip to the pool, and the child drowned. And so in this particular case, as we went through the file and went through the materials, one of the things that military does so well is they have these very, very strict and comprehensive SOPs, standing operating procedures. And it's line by line, A through Z, on what you should do, when you should do it, how you should do it. So this young child tragically drowned at a swimming pool. I think it was a leisure pool on a military base there for the military families. And when the case was proceeding, as we walked through these SOPs, standing operating procedures, the military required so much of the aquatic facilities, so much of the lifeguards. It was very easy to win this case because they violated A, they violated B, they violated F, they violated G, their own standards, which were higher than the Water Safety Agency standards and higher than the lifeguarding standards. Everything was in numbers, one lifeguard per X number of swimmers and so many square feet. And so, again, I don't recall the specifics of the drowning, but I learned two things through this case. It supposedly is difficult, if not impossible, to sue the government. But if you do have a case, because they have so many comprehensive written standard operating procedures, it's very, very easy for them to violate their own standards.
Can you talk a little bit about how what could people learn moving forward from that? So it's easy to violate your own standards. So would you make more realistic standards so that you can achieve them, or just have to be way more strict on your standards? And how do you do that if you're understaffed?
So in looking back at this case, first of all, from a parent's perspective, I would think they would have a little bit of overconfidence because not only did they have lifeguards on duty, lifeguards protecting their child, but they also, it's a military base. it's a military facility, aquatic facility. So I think a lot of parents fall into a overconfidence syndrome when there's a guarded facility on a military base, number one. Number two, I think the military may have to be more realistic in establishing their standards. That, they should meet the national industry standards, but they shouldn't overly require standards that are many and varied and over and beyond the national standard of care.
Well, that would go for any facility, right? So coming up with standards that ensure safety, but also ensuring that you're able to reach those. So finding ways that you can meet the standards.
Right. Good point. And another thing is the terminology, the wording of your standards, rather than, and this comes up in trials, is, rather than using the word must, you have more flexibility if you say we should rather than must. And rather than required, say recommended. So you want to do all these things. And I'm not saying to cut corners, but you don't want to create this trap for yourself.
So what do you do if you're a facility, what do you do if you want to come up with the safest standards, but with the safest standards, you're not able to meet those? How do you go about developing your standards in writing and in practice?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And that's what we all struggle with, Rach. I mean, that's the problem. And I'll give you two examples. One is a lifeguard to swimmer ratio of 1/25. And the other is the 10-20 patron protection plan, 10 seconds to spot the victim, 20 minutes to respond. Both of these standards are very, very good recommendations, but they're very, very, very difficult to meet in real life. So let's first take the one lifeguard per 25 swimmers. What happens if you get 26 or 27 in the pool? I mean, not every facility can blow a whistle and wave another lifeguard on duty. With the 10-20 patron protection plans, what happens if this is all on video camera and the lifeguard detects the victim in 12 or 13 seconds? So in both of those regards, I would say we need more flexibility. If you're writing a lifeguard to swimmer standard for your facility, you should give yourself more wiggle room and say, if you're going to use a ratio, which I don't like, by the way, is, one lifeguard for, anywhere between 20 and 30 swimmers, roughly 20 or 30 swimmers, or approximately 20 to 30 swimmers. And then for the scanning model, we want you to scan every 10 to 15 seconds or 10 to 20 seconds as your scan with a 20-second response.
And in ways that the safest standards can't be met, if you're thinking of supervision and how to be the safest with that, looking for ways to supplement supervision with technology and other ways to ensure safety. So looking at all of the layers of protection and how we can meet the safest standards for the facility. Not just, there tends to be a hyper focus on just supervision. And so how can we make it the safest with the lifeguards or the supervision? But since that fails, or sometimes we can't meet that, coming up with a whole facility plan, which supplements that supervision so that we can meet, can be safe and prevent drownings.
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time, is making the parents their part of the safety team. They're looking for people, using the safety turtle, using life jackets, using drowning detection system. we say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to prevent a drowning. And so no one lifeguard or two lifeguards is going to prevent drownings. The lifeguards can't watch everyone all the time. So that's the key, is getting everyone involved and using as many technologies as you can to supplement, as you say, supplement and strengthen supervision rather than relying upon lifeguard supervision alone.